right, good afternoon. How's everyone doing? Oh, all right. Looks like the afternoon coffee has kicked in. Excellent. Thank you guys very much. You'll notice, starting exactly on time because we have about 18 hours of content I need to get into 75 minutes. So wanted to make sure we got right on started. I'm Jeff Woolsey. I'm a Principal Program Manager in the Windows Server and Cloud Division. Thank you very much. Now, originally this session was titled Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V. As you can imagine, I got some new stuff to talk about. So we got a lot of things to cover, so I'm going to get right into this. One of the first things I want to say is thank you. An absolute huge monster thank you. Since the release of 2012, the momentum for Hyper-V and 2012 has been crazy. I know that literally the day we've made the final bits available, I spoke to customers that were the next day building out 64-node clusters. They were so excited about what we were delivering. So we've been seeing the tremendous amount of momentum out there. I'm happy to say when Hurricane Sandy hit, we actually had a number of customers that were saved due to Hyper-V Replica. Our replication technology actually saved a number of customers. We feel really good about that. We want to continue on that momentum, and we're going to continue to do that. So just a huge thank you to all of you, and to also thank you for your input and your feedback, because let me tell you something. We've been listening very, very carefully to understand what do we need to do next? What do we need to make better? I'm always listening. We are always listening. We're always trying to figure out what is the next best thing. And very much listening this week as we start to share with you what we're doing in Windows Server 2012 R2 and System Center 2012 R2. One thing I'm going to put up is the Microsoft Cloud OS vision. Hopefully you're getting sick and tired of this slide. I hope by the time you get home and you put your head on the pillow after this long week that this is in your dreams and you know exactly what this is. Because last year a lot of people said, I don't think I understand what Microsoft's vision is. So this year we wanted to make sure everyone's crystal clear as to what that means, and you've probably seen this in a whole bunch of decks. When we think about the Microsoft Cloud OS and our vision, it's really quite simple. We think of it as three legs to a stool. Number one, it starts with the private cloud. And as someone who's been working on virtualization and hypervisors now for over 15 years, I've watched this happen throughout my life, and I've just seen this kind of happen over time. What happened was in the 90s, in the early part of the aughts, what was happening was people were buying servers at an alarming rate. I was in a small startup. In fact, we were at a point where we had a server pretty much for every person in the company. Okay? Yeah, a lot of people shaking their head going, yeah, I've been there, done that. Well, even into the 2000s, into the aught years, people were still doing it. And I'd speak to customer after customer who said, Jeff, look, I have all the budget I need. I can buy as many servers as I need. That's not the problem. I have no power to power them with and no place to put them, which is why virtualization arose. Okay, because now we're going to take a whole bunch of servers, we're going to virtualize them, and we're going to do that for consolidation. We're going to use our servers more efficiently, and guess what? It allows me to do that without avoiding a data center upgrade or a brand new data center. That's great. That's virtualization for consolidation. That is not cloud. It is not cloud. I know lots of people will tell you that, and they'll push that, but that is not. When I think about cloud, it's very different. So when we did this virtualization for consolidation, we took 10, 20 servers, we put them on a single host and ran them as VMs. But the thing is, we never changed the management paradigm. We still logged into a VM, we still made changes on IP addresses, we made changes for resources, we had a little bit more memory here, a little more storage here, configured a NIC here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Again, this is great, there's nothing wrong with this, but this is consolidation. This is not cloud. When I think about cloud, I say, look, I'm not going to deliver a VM or a server. I'm going to deliver services, and I'm going to give you highly standardized services. Instead of giving you a SQL server, I'm going to deliver you a 3-tier SQL application. I've got a back end, a middle tier, and a front tier. And guess what? I give this to you in a small and a medium and a large size template. And in fact, you don't even ask me. You go to a portal and you request it. You see, cloud is requestable. Cloud is available. Cloud is chargeable. Cloud is elastic. So guess what? When I deploy that thing, and guess what? Over time, if it needs to grow, it just automatically grows. I give it a minimal amount of processors and storage and networking, and if it needs more, it grows. And guess what? It's usage-based. So I'm going to charge you if it uses more. And guess what? If it uses less, I'm going to charge you less. That's what cloud is all about. You can see that's very different than, hey, let's rack and stack and do a P to V and stick a VM and call it a virtual machine. Okay, so very different. When we think about private cloud at Microsoft, it's about Windows Server and System Center. Way too many people are focused on the hypervisor. And don't get me wrong, that's where I've been living for the last 15 years, working on awesome hypervisors. But the problem is, at the end of the day, I need to be able to make sure that my apps are healthy. Okay, and you need the management tools that can look inside. If I'm running Dynamics, if I'm running Exchange, if I'm running SharePoint, if I'm running SQL, the best way to manage that is through System Center, because guess what? Those teams wrote the management packs that plug into System Center. So they know when Exchange is not performing well, when SQL is not performing well, when SharePoint is not performing well. How many times do you have one of those, gosh, we're getting all these trouble tickets, we think there's some bad performance, we don't even know where to start, and you get one of these. Okay, dev guys are pointing at IT, IT's pointing at devs, everyone's pointing at operations, and you're stuck in the middle trying to solve the problem. At the end of the day, you just want it to work. Well, you want something to tell you exactly what the problem is. That's what System Center is all about. So private cloud is about control. I've talked to plenty of folks all around the world that say, Jeff, I live in Brazil, I live in Germany, I live in Canada. I have workloads that have to live in a Canadian data center on Canadian soil run by a Canadian citizen. I don't care how cool you tell me Azure is, it's not going up there. Are you going to try and argue with me? Absolutely not. It's not a technology conversation at all. This is a business conversation. This is a regulatory. This is a legal. This is a compliance reason. It's not worth arguing about. You need to do what makes business sense for you. So you know what? Let's build the best private cloud together. That's what Windows Server and System Center are about, control and that private cloud. Now, we've also spent a crazy amount of time and resources on public cloud, because public cloud is about scale. I can write an application today with an MSDN license, post it up on Azure, test and dev it, and when I'm done, click, OK, let's replicate this, and all of a sudden it's available worldwide. I didn't buy an ounce of storage, I didn't buy any computers, I didn't buy any networks, I just made it available on Azure, and now I get billed on usage-based. If you're a small company, if you're a brand new developer, this is like manna from heaven. You didn't need to invest in any sort of infrastructure. You didn't need to do any capacity planning. It's all ready to go. With Azure, we have platform as a service. We have software as a service with SaaS with Office 365. And we have infrastructure as a service with Azure Virtual Machines. So PaaS, SaaS, and IaaS. The reason why I bring all this up is because depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you a different definition of cloud. That's why I'm being so crisp on this. You talk to VMware, and they're going to tell you, no, cloud is this thing down here at the bottom. They will tell you this thing is cloud, running it on your premises. If you talk to Amazon, Amazon will say, no, that's not cloud. Cloud is when you run it up here on AWS. If you talk to Salesforce.com, they'll give you a completely different answer. They'll say, no, they're both wrong. Salesforce will tell you, no, it's running SaaS up there. We reject all of these notions. They're all wrong. The answer to cloud is all of the above. In fact, even more. It's also service providers. This is how we think about cloud. It's holistic. Service providers give you customization and reach. I've been in Australia, I've been in Africa, I've been parts all around the world where literally there's very few people out there, but guess what? They need network connectivity, they need cloud resources. In the middle of Australia right now, they're doing mining. There's precious minerals, resources, literally in the middle of nowhere, northern central part of Australia, but their guys are leaving college, they're going out to the middle of nowhere to do this mining. They're getting paid a crazy amount of money, okay, but they're living in the middle of nowhere. It's satellite connectivity. So guess what? To get network connectivity, there's a service provider there. And there's plenty of these places all around the world. So customization and reach, our service providers are key for that. Well, guess what? Look at that picture for just a moment. You've got Windows Server, you've got System Center, you've got Azure. And by the way, I'm going to say that for the 1,000th time, Azure is running Windows Server. The same bits you get. Windows Azure is Windows Server 2012, Hyper-V. The biggest data centers on Earth are running Hyper-V. The other guys don't want you to know that. They keep saying, no, we're the enterprise class guys. Baloney. We got hundreds of thousands of servers running Windows Server 2012 Hyper-V around the Earth. It doesn't get any more enterprise grade than that. So when you look at this is what we think about a consistent platform. And look at that little picture I just put up there. What is that? That's the Azure Pack. You see, when you go up to Windows Azure, what do you see? You see that really clean, beautiful blue, white, and black interface. It's super clean. Well, guess what? If you're developing your private cloud on premises, guess what? We're going to give you that same interface. That's what the Azure Pack is. So as you build your private cloud on premises, guess what? It looks the same as Azure. When you go to your service provider and he's using the Azure Pack, guess what? It's the same interface. If you go to Amazon today, you get one interface. You go to Salesforce, you get something else. You go to Azure, you get something else. You go to your private cloud, you get something else. You go to service provider, you get something else. It's Portal Palooza. We want to give you a consistent look and feel and services. That is what the Azure Pack about. That is what consistency is all about. So when we think about our cloud, it's about development. It's about making sure we give you Visual Studio that allows you to write whatever application you need, whenever you need it, and wherever it makes sense, whether it's on-premises in a service provider or on Azure. Management. System Center is literally everywhere. System Center in a service provider, System Center on-premises, System Center in the cloud. Intune, more investments there every day. Data. Look at that. SQL just appeared. You've got SQL on-prem, you've got SQL in a service provider, you've got SQL as a virtual machine up in Azure, and you've got native SQL services. You've got big data everywhere. Identity, Active Directory, on both on-prem as well as Azure Active Directory. And then finally, virtualization. See, this is the big difference. The other guys tell you virtualization is the end state. It's not. Virtualization is a key ingredient, don't get me wrong. That's where I've been living, like I said. I love it. It's awesome. But it's not the end state. It's a piece of the puzzle. So that is how we think about the CloudOS vision at Microsoft. So what we delivered in 2012, I'm going to go through this very quickly because I need to remind everyone we delivered so much in 2012 to kind of set the stage for 2012 R2. Number one, you told us quite simply you want to virtualize everything. Don't leave a stone unturned. Done deal. It's all there. We support the largest servers in the industry, up to 320 logical processors per server. That's a 16-socket server. Each socket has 10 cores, and you enable symmetric multi-threading. Even without memory and storage, that machine's in the 6 digits. Huge box. In terms of physical memory, we support up to 4 terabytes of memory per server. Just the memory alone, I believe it cost, last time I checked, about $500,000. Just the memory. Each virtual machine can support up to 1 terabyte of memory. We support up to 64 terabytes per virtual disk, not per VM, not per host, per disk. That's 32 times anyone else in the industry. That's extremely important because big data is here and now. If you're using any other virtualization platform, that means you're going to need at least 32 disks to get that. And don't forget, we still support 255 disks per VM. So if you do the math, it's about 16 petabytes per VM. So we think we got you covered from a storage standpoint. Finally, from a cluster node, look at that. 64 nodes and up to 8,000 VMs in a cluster. Largest clusters in the industry by far. And the reason why we had to do both numbers is because it's actually important to do both, is because, number one, when you get to 64 nodes and 8,000 VMs, that's 125 VMs per host. And by the way, we test that and run that into the ground when we say that that's supported. That's a very, very real number. In fact, one question I get asked all the time is, Jeff, do I have to have 64 nodes to get 8,000 VMs? Technically, no. We support up to 1,024 VMs per host, so technically you could have an 8-node cluster with 8,000 VMs. I would never recommend that. Your fault domain is way too high. However, I will tell you that at MMS about a month ago, we created a 32-node cluster and ran easily over 8,000 VMs. I think it was over 8,100 VMs. So it just runs. It just scales. Of course, we want to prove that performance to you, and what better way to do that with a scale-up workload than with SQL? We had a third-party test this for us. ESG ran a standard test and basically added more virtual processors. This is an OLTP workload. This is a real workload. This is the one that the DB guys care about. As we added more virtual procs, going from 4 all the way to 64, what you see there is nearly perfect linear scalability in the VM. That's because we did things like virtual guest NUMA inside the VM. So the VMs understand NUMA within there. Gives us nearly perfect linear scalability. You won't find this on any other hypervisor. We also tested this with Exchange. We also have a paper coming out with Dynamics as well. let's be very, very crystal clear on this point. If you're running Dynamics, if you're running Exchange, if you're running SharePoint, if you're running SQL, if you're running Link, the absolute best way to do it is on the Microsoft hypervisor managed by Microsoft System Center, period. And I mean that from a performance standpoint, I mean that from a scale standpoint, but most importantly, I mean this from a test standpoint. Every single day, in the server division alone, we create over 25,000 VMs and run 25,000 test cases on a minimum a day. All of it on Hyper-V. That's just the server. That's not the client. That's not even the SQL and the Exchange guys. We test everything on Hyper-V. Hyper-V is literally everywhere. It's in Windows 8 Client. It powers Windows Azure. It's in Windows Server. You may have heard something about the Xbox One, perhaps. We're using it everywhere. If you're creating apps for the Windows Phone, you're using the emulator. What's that running on? Oh, that's running on Hyper-V as well. We're using it everywhere, and in places you don't even know. It's all over the place. In terms of performance, we also demonstrated we can easily deliver over 1 million IOPS from a single VM. Did this demonstration multiple times last year. This means we can easily virtualize over 99% of the world's SQL server with support for up to 64 VPs, a terabyte of memory, and over 1 million IOPS. Not even breathing hard. Hyper-V is not going to be your bottleneck. Anytime someone tells me they're having a performance problem, I say, well, first start looking at your storage. Because most of the time, Hyper-V is waiting. Most of the time, it is waiting for I/O. Usually it's storage. Then I'd look at networking. Hyper-V is not your bottleneck. In terms of storage, we made huge investments there. Live storage migration, the new VHDX format, supports up to 64 terabytes per disk. Online meta operations support for native 4K disks, virtual fiber channel support, offloaded data transfer, automatic trim and unmap, which is a feature that only Hyper-V supports, and then support for the new continuously available scale-out file servers. So again, this is all stuff I'm showing in 2012, and you can see we've made some major investments in storage. Right now, I'd like to take the opportunity to actually invite one of our partners up here, Symantec, because Symantec, we've got some very cool things that they're announcing. In fact, I believe the announcement went public yesterday, which is full-on net backup support for Hyper-V and some very awesome integration in the System Center. So Amit, welcome, and thank you very much. Let's switch you on over into here.
Thank you.
There we go.
Can you hear me fine? Great.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So thank you, Jeff. And my name is Amit Sinha, and I work in NetBackup product management team. And I'm very excited to talk about NetBackup for Hyper-V. Very quickly, the support for Windows Server 2012 and Hyper-V is coming out in next couple of weeks. So we are going to be releasing 7.506, which will support Windows Server 2012 and Hyper-V 3. Some of the features which will be available, like deduplication, which is very highly efficient deduplication, which actually can give you more than 90% of the deduplication ratios. Flexible backup and recovery, what that means is whether you want to recover a single file or you want to recover the entire VM, that's all possible using the incremental backup or full backups. And the best thing is it's very simple to set up, faster to recover, and also used for DR. As Jeff mentioned, in Cyclone Sandy, or Hurricane Sandy rather, like there were so many customers saved by the replicas, right? So NetBackup is another solution by which you can protect the data that way.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just realized something. I switched on there too quickly. Sorry.
Actually.
Okay.
So just to talk about some of the features, scalable enterprise class data protection. What that means is when Jeff was talking about 64 node cluster or 8,000 VMs, right? So when you have a Hyper-V deployment such a large in capacity or in configuration, you need a system which is very highly scalable, which can protect your data, which can back up the data, and at the same time it can recover very fast. And NetBackup provides that. Efficient deduplication, whether you want to deduplicate the data over the client to reduce the bandwidth usage, or whether you want to perform the deduplication of the media server. Both options are available. Flexible deployment models. So for example, you can deploy the Hyper-V agent on the client itself, or you can deploy it in the proxy server configuration. This is where if you have very large deployment, you can basically put it on a proxy server. That way the Hyper-V host is not heavily loaded. And so all these top features, about 5 of them, they are included in the 7.506 release, which is coming out next couple of weeks. Last 2 features, which we have, what we have done is we have integrated with System Center. We have provided a plugin, and I will show you a demo. And this is basically where you can monitor and manage your system net backup operations, and also you can perform the recovery. So we are empowering the System Center administrators to perform the self-service recovery for a VM, for even a single file.
So why don't we switch on over to the demo, and let's actually go and integrate with net backup.
Absolutely. So this is how, I'm pretty sure most of you are using net backup for large data center data protection. This is how the net backup console looks like. As you can see here, we have various types of wizards which are very simple to configure and set it up. Without wasting a lot of time, I will just quickly go to Hyper-V demo setup. We have already set up a demo. What I will do is I'll just go through the policy setup for a new Hyper-V data protection. And I create the new policy here, and I provide the name, TechEd. And as you can see, there's a policy wizard available for this. And of course, you can select various workloads, file system, databases, applications, and so on. In this particular case, what we are doing is we are creating a policy for Hyper-V. And I select that, and next. And now I want to select Hyper-V. Hyper-V server name is SCVMM. Oh, okay, I made a mistake. SVR. Sorry about that. So here it comes up with, so here is an option where if you want to enable the file recovery from individual VMs, so remember you have an option to recover the entire VM or a single file within a VM, whether that file is on a Windows OS or Linux OS. So if you want to enable that, you can click on this option. Primary VM identifier, you have basically like a couple of choices here. You want to look for VM display name. I select that. Enable offline backup from a non-VSS. What that means is, let's say if you have a Linux VM, which is non-VSS OS, you can select this option. Let's go and take a look at it, the advanced option. So this is where, when I was talking about the off-host backup, so if you have snapshot providers, you can select basically what kind of providers you have. You have system, software, hardware, and you can also provide the snapshot attributes and so on. Right. Once I have selected those, now I want to select what I want to back up. So selecting virtual machines, and I have the option whether I can enter the VM display name here, or I can browse and select the various virtual machines. So as you can see here,
so you're browsing all the servers from SCVMM?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. So I can pick and select which server I want. I've already have a policy, so I won't go for it. Now this is where what I want to select, what files and folders I want to back up within the VM. And once I have selected that, now it is asking me what kind of backup I want to perform, whether it's a full backup or an incremental backup. So I can select either of those. And the next option is a full backup of, now I want to specify what is frequency going to be and how much the retention is going to be, right? So I can select various options here. And this is the final dialog box, which talks about when exactly, what is my backup window, off hours, working hours, all day, or custom, right? And once you are done, this is basically a summary of what we have done, what kind of policies we have created so far. So with that, I will just move to, so this is the part, Net Backup Console, which is mainly used by the backup administrators in large data centers where backup administrators are different. And now, once the policy is set up, what you can do is you can go to the System Center. And here you see the cool icon here, the Symantec Net Backup. This is what we have done. We have provided a plugin which will allow you to manage, monitor, even do the self-recoveries.
So nice integrated plug-in to SCVMM here. That was something we added new in System Center 2012 SP1 is to make it pluggable. And you can see Symantec's doing exactly that.
Right. And here you can see you have a dashboard of the status of VM backup. So you can see here how many backups were backed up, how many backup failed, and what were some of the VMs which were excluded from the reporting. Here also you have a very good view of how many VMs have not been backed up for a certain time. So as you can see, as a system administrator, you don't have to be dependent upon backup administrator to get that information. You have everything within the System Center. And if you want to get more details, what you can do is you click on the virtual machines, and it will give you another option where you can see, I want to see all these virtual machines basically on how many machines were successful, backup failed, and I can sort these machines out. And if I want to search the virtual machines based upon the names, I can just say basically various fields. I can create the search queries, and at the same time I can also select the reporting, which is like show me all the VMs which have been backed up or for certain times.
So what you see here is, again, it's a very powerful, and I really like this view over here because it's really a glance and go type look here in the summary view, where you can basically see, hey, show me what does my estate look like? Am I healthy when it comes to backup? Am I actually staying on top of my backup? Do I need to go ride the backup guys and say, hey, what are we doing here? Are we making sure everything's getting properly covered? And you got a quick view of everything holistically. Again, and plugging into VMM, just taking advantage of those new capabilities in System Center make this really easy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So another cool thing I want to show you is how you can perform the self-service recovery. So this is like we are empowering the System Center administrator to perform the recovery of a single VM or a single file. So you don't have to leave the System Center GUI. All you do is just launch the wizard, and you go next. You specify the source, which is, and you enter the name of the VM which you want to recover. So in this case, it is SCVMM. And click next. It's getting all the information, looking at the catalog. And here you go. So all the information, so the backup details, virtual machine attributes, and here is the information on the contents of this particular backup. Now you have the option whether you can recover it from the latest backup, or you can also go and manually specify if you are looking for a backup from a specific time frame. So you can go browse backup, and it will give you the option for like date range, and you can search the backup images and everything.
So it's very flexible, giving you a point in time snapshot you can go back to. And again, making this very easy because I don't have to leave the VMM console. Makes it very easy from again, understanding holistically how am I doing for my entire VM estate and being able to restore back from a specific point in time. Amit, thank you. We got to keep going because we've got plenty more content.
Just one final stage, and when you have selected which VM you want to restore, you can select how to restore to the same server and so on.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Very flexible. Thank you very much. Thank you. We're very excited about that. A lot of really cool things. Again, being able to plug into VMM, providing you that holistic console. If you've been a number of sessions we've had this week, you can see that VMM is becoming a lot more powerful. In 2012 SP1, I can literally roll in a rack of servers and plug them into the network, plug them in for power, and without ever touching those servers, I can go on over here to System Center and provision all of the Hyper-V nodes and configure them for clustering, enable Hyper-V without ever going to the box. In System Center 2012 R2, VMM can also now configure and roll out a scale-out file server, again, without even you touching the box. You literally roll in your servers with storage attached. You plug them in. You can provision your storage pools, your spaces, your scale-out file server, and your Hyper-V compute nodes, again, without ever touching the box. And then on top of that, System Center now can plug in and manage your top-of-rack switches through OMI and additional integration. Now when you see things like Symantec Net Backup here, again, you've got more capabilities without ever leaving this console, and it really being a fantastic central point for management. So really appreciate that, really excited about what Symantec's doing, and you're going to see a lot more integration into VM. Thank you again, Amit. So speaking of storage, one thing I do want to quickly take a moment is to talk really quickly about storage appliances, because one of the things I've been doing and listening over since we released Server 2012 was talking to a lot of people around what that release entailed, and I got a lot of interesting questions about spaces. And it became very clear to me that Microsoft, we've done not a really good job explaining what Spaces is and what it really means. So let me just quickly explain to you, and let's demystify storage for just a minute. So what do I mean by a storage appliance? Well, you can go out and buy a SAN, you can buy a NAS, but what are these things? I mean, literally, if you go out and buy a NAS, a product, or a SAN, what's actually in that thing? You ever opened it actually up and looked inside? What you'll find that inside is it contains some x86, x64 processors. It contains memory, it contains network adapters, it contains storage HBAs, SAS controllers in there. That sounds awfully familiar to me. It actually sounds a lot like a server. So let's take a look at what does a storage appliance actually do. So if you take a storage appliance and kind of logically dissect it in half, look at the back end for just a moment. What does the back do? Well, the back is where you basically have those SAS connectors. Those are multiple physical connectors that plug into your SAS disks. Okay, that allows me to take those disks, pool them together, present LUNs. And of course, I'm going to make them available. I'm going to RAID them or mirror them or provide parity or something. But essentially, what it's doing is it's pooling all of those disks and aggregating them so I can present them and carve them up. That's what the back end is. The front end presents interfaces, whether that's iSCSI, fiber channel over Ethernet, NFS, SMB, etc. And by the way, when you buy one of these, you actually don't buy one, you buy two. They always sell you two, because they always say, well, look, you want this to be fault tolerant, right? You don't want this to ever go down, right? So always buy two. So if number one goes down, number two continues right along without any service interruption. It's completely transparent. So that's why you buy two. And in fact, some of these even go out up to 4 or even up to 8. Okay, most of the time 2 is more than plenty, but you want it for resiliency. So on top of that, then your servers will attach to those in some way, shape, or form. It could be gigabit Ethernet, it could be 10 gigabit Ethernet, it could be fiber channel, it could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 8, it could be 16. That's it. There's nothing magical, there's nothing mystical. I bring this up because people tend to think of them as magical and mystical. It's that thing sitting over in the corner with the blinky lights. We just kind of don't touch it. We know it costs a lot of money, though, so we don't touch it or even talk about it poorly in its presence because we don't want to upset the mighty array over there. So that's what a storage appliance is. So let me explain to you what we've done in 2012 and what we're doing in 2012 R2. So what is the back end for us? That's Spaces. Think about it, look at it, take it in. That's what Spaces is. You plug in a whole bunch of disks. Spaces then aggregates all those disks, And now we pool them, we present parity, we present mirrors. You saw me do the keynote demo the other day. You actually saw me create a three-way mirror. Yep, that's what Spaces does. And in fact, in 2012 R2, that's where we put automated storage tiering. So when you saw me go from 7,400 IOPS to over 124,000 IOPS and your all jaws drops out of your mouth because you're like, oh my gosh, how's he doing that? That's how we're doing it. We just put automated storage tiering in Spaces. All right, what's the front end? The front end is the file server, 2012 or 2012 R2, iSCSI, NFS, SMB. And guess what? We scale those out. You can cluster those. That's what the scale-out file server is. We released that in 2012. And guess what? We can run 2, we can run 4, we can go all the way out to 8. We got customers that are running this right now in production with 2012, absolutely love it. Okay, and then of course you plug in your servers, and those can attach via Ethernet, gigabit, 10 gigabit, or you can go over 40, 56 gigabit RDMA as well, and get completely ludicrous performance. Performance that actually is faster than a SAN. You heard me right, faster than a SAN, because I showed you over here on the array, it was up to 16 gigs of fiber channel. Here I'm showing you actually up to 56 gigs of RDMA, even 40. Blazing performance. Turns out we're actually running into the performance limitations now of PCI. We're actually hitting the limitations of RAM. That's how fast this is. Your 1066 DDR3 memory is actually too slow. We're getting really excited about DDR4. That's how fast this is. So that's what we're doing in terms of the file server and Spaces. So that is what that cloud deployment looks like. We've got Hyper-V hosts, you've got SMB, and you've got the scale-out file server. And you'll notice that the Hyper-V hosts is one set of servers. You've got your storage is another set of servers. And the reason why we like them as separate discrete units is because we want to be able to scale them independently. If I need more Hyper-V hosts, great, let's add more Hyper-V hosts. If I need more storage hosts, let's add more storage. But we like to keep those separate. SMB3, guess what? Gives us all those things we're looking for. It gives us fault tolerant, it gets multi-channel, it gets us encryption, gets us crazy performance. By the way, the scale-out file server is fault tolerant. I get a lot of people asking me, Jeff, if I go with this thing, is there some trade-off? Am I going to lose some resiliency? No. It's fault tolerant. If server 1 goes down, go yank out the power cable, server 2 continues right along without any interruption at all. Your apps, your workloads, Hyper-V doesn't know anything just happened because SMB3 is resilient to all of that. That's why we made such a big deal out of SMB3 in 2012. So I've shown that to a lot of people after talking about 2012. I've shown a lot of people, especially in the keynote, and now people are asking me this question. Jeff, deploying my Microsoft private cloud with the scale-out file server looks great. Can you show me what an ideal networking and storage configuration looks like that uses that? Absolutely. In fact, let's actually walk you through the whole thing. It's highly available at every layer. So first of all, you've got a scale-out file server, scale-out file cluster. Could be 2 nodes, could be 4. Well, let's stick with 2. You got your 10 gig top-of-rack switch. You've got 2 10 gig NICs. Now the left hand is for networking. The right hand is for storage. So this is 10 gig with RDMA. On the left hand, we're going to take those 2 10 gig NICs, we're going to team them. I'll show you why in just a minute. On the right-hand side, those 10 gig NICs with RDMA, you get SMB multi-channel, you get transparent failover. So you get complete redundancy. And again, at every layer of the stack is redundancy and resiliency. If something goes down, there's something there right next to it to keep it going. So now right above that VLAN trunk, that NIC team is we want to trunk those. We've got VM LANs for the LANs for the virtual machines networking. We've got live migration, cluster shared volume, iSCSI, host management. So again, we took those 2 10 gig NICs, we teamed them, now we just carve it up in software. Extremely flexible, gives you lots of headroom. If you need to change things a little bit later, you can do it because it's all in software. And by the way, I'm showing you 10 gig NICs. You may be looking at this going, but Jeff, I want to do this on the cheap with 1 gig NICs or something like that. Certainly you could do this with 1 gig NICs, but it's going to get a lot more painful. What I mean by that is you're going to have like a zillion different 1 gig NICs in there, and just managing it becomes differently. So I'm assuming like, really, if you want to go with a really good solution, this is a great way to do it. Yes, you can do it with 1 gig NICs, but it just makes management a lot more difficult. Moving up, we've got the parent partition, we've got Hyper-V, we've got virtual switches. So here we've got a VLAN trunk for one of the virtual switches, live migration, cluster CSV, iSCSI. Why iSCSI? because we want the virtual machines to also be able to be clustered as well. So at the very top of the stack, I've got a VM on the left that's not clustered, just a standalone virtual machine. Those two sitting next to it, though, are virtual machines that I actually want to cluster to give me high availability within the VM. So to do that, you've got to be able to present a LUN into a guest cluster. So to do that, I'm using iSCSI to do that. Now, spoiler alert, in Server 2012 R2, we've introduced something really super cool called shared VHDX, and I'll get to that in just a minute. But right now, with 2012, if you want to do guest clustering, you got to use iSCSI or virtual fiber channel. We want to make that even easier, and I'll show you that in just a minute with 2012 R2. But that's, at a high level, that's what the entire architecture looks like. It's actually very straightforward, using all Ethernet. And the reason why I bring this up is because I've talked to a lot of cloud service providers, I've talked to a lot of enterprises, and I asked them, what does Nirvana in your data center look like? And very often they say, you know what, Jeff? Nirvana to me looks like a Cat6 cable. I'm like, really? What is that? Why do you say that? Because I have to pay for fiber channel switches and fiber channel cables. And you know what? Those fiber channel cables actually cost a lot of money. Those fiber channel switches cost a lot of money. And if I could converge these and all go to a Cat6 world, boy, I like that a lot. Guess what? This gets you there. This also gives you the ability to scale each independently. Like I said, the compute nodes and the scale-out file server. And every part of this is resilient all the way into the guest itself. So one of the things we also did in 2012 was complete VM mobility across the board. Live migration, SMB live migration, live storage migration, shared nothing. We also introduced concurrent live migration, which means we can live migrate as many VMs as your hardware will allow. This is 2012. This isn't even R2 yet. And guess what? That's live migrating 40 VMs simultaneously. This is over two 10-gig NICs. Nothing special. This is 2012, not even R2 yet. Okay? The point being is in 2012, we basically said, look, we're not going to limit live migration in any way, shape, or form. It depends on how much hardware you want to bring to the party. If you have a gigabit NIC, yeah, maybe I can live migrate 2, maybe 4. If I've got two 1 gigabit NICs teamed, yeah, maybe I can do 4, maybe I can do 8. If I've got 10 gigabit, yeah, maybe I can do 10 or 20. If I've got dual team 10 gigabit like this, I'm doing 40. If I've got quad team 10 gigabit NIC, I've actually live migrated over 200 VMs simultaneously. Again, this is with 2012. And now we've supercharged this in R2. So let's get to R2. We did a lot in 2012 we're really excited about, but like I said, we listened to you. And we said, what is it we need to do better? Because we're always asking that question. Always. So your feedback. Number one, data center licensing is great. Activation is a challenge. What I mean by that is, going all the way back to 2003, if you buy Windows Server Data Center Edition, we give you unlimited copies of Windows Server instances on that server. Done this for a long time. You all like it, because our data center licenses went through the ceiling after we did that. And it continues to be just grown like mad. People love it. Look, here's my server. I buy Windows Server Data Center, and now I can run as many copies of Windows Server on it. Awesome. But activation can be a challenge, and I'll explain that in a minute, especially for a cloud service provider. Pixie boot. If you have to do Pixie boot today, oh, the emulated NIC works, but it's another thing I have to manage. I wish that was easier. We love what you did with the scale-out file server. We love the virtual fiber channel. Make more investments in storage. Guest clustering is difficult. So as I mentioned in that last one, I was talking about the architecture today. We have to present iSCSI LUNs. We have to present fiber channel LUNs. This is extremely, if not impossible, to do in a cloud service provider model. I'll explain that in a minute. So let me explain to you an interesting challenge. You're a cloud service provider. And the cloud service provider activates their hosts with their infrastructure. So you can see at the bottom, I've got these compute nodes. And these compute nodes activate with their host or network. Except, how do the tenants on top, these are my customers, how do they activate? Because guess what? Their network is actually going back to their business. It actually doesn't talk to the host or network. So this is honestly, this is our problem. We need to solve this. We need to make this really easy for you. That's exactly what we're doing with automatic VM activation in 2012 R2. With automatic VM activation, if you're running Windows Server Data Center Edition on the host with Hyper-V, and it is licensed, and it's activated, then we will automatically activate the guest, even if you don't have network connectivity to the VM. Okay? We're making this super easy. This is great for cloud service providers. This is great for enterprises. And from a host requirement, just be running Server 2012 R2 Data Center with Hyper-V. And from a guest standpoint, you have to be running Server 2012 R2 Standard, Data Center, or Essentials. So for a cloud service provider, guess what? All they have to do is install and run Server 2012 R2, and all of their guests, all of their customers will be automatically activated. No more challenges there. Super easy. Next one, Hyper-V VMs. So, interesting thing about Hyper-V VMs. If you look inside a Hyper-V VM, like actually go into Device Manager, what do you see? You see something that resembles a PC from 1997. By the way, the same is true of VMware, Zen, all the other guys. We pretend to have an Intel Pentium 440BX motherboard. I think VMware's is either a BX or a GX or something like that. Zen's is something similar. But basically, this looks like a PC from, back in the olden days. The reason why we did it was backwards compatibility. Okay? You want to be able to run whatever OS you want to run. You want to run DOS on Hyper-V, go right ahead. By the way, there seems to be some FUD out there in the universe that Hyper-V can't run any OS that the other guys can. We certainly can. We just don't care. You want to run DOS on Hyper-V, go right ahead. But you expect me to say, I support it, and I'm going to help you install it? No, we stopped supporting DOS ages ago. Okay? It all runs. Hyper-V is backwards compatible. That's why we did and provide those legacy hardware inside a VM. Today, a Hyper-V VM can PXE boot only from the emulated NIC. By the way, inside that Hyper-V VM, it has a traditional PC AT BIOS. I kind of joke about this is handcrafted, old-world craftsmanship code. It's 16-bit BIOS code. It's limited to 2.2 terabytes from a boot volume, and it boots from virtual IDE only. And this VM, don't get me wrong, it's been highly optimized. I give you 64 virtual procs, I give you a terabyte of memory. This thing gives you spectacular performance. It runs like crazy. However, we want to advance the state of the art. We want to push virtualization forward. We want to make VMs, better than physical. To do that means I need to get past the 20, 25-year-old looking VM. So we're introducing Generation 2 virtual machines. Generation 2 VMs are designed to solve a bunch of problems. Number one, ease of management and operations. I can now boot off the synthetic NIC. In fact, the PXE emulated NIC is completely gone. It's not even there anymore. Which means now you can just simply boot off it. You don't have to have two NICs. You don't have to boot off the emulated and switch to the synthetic. It's just one NIC, and it's just always fast. Sweet. Next, we want to give you dynamic flexible storage. What I mean by that is, number one, remember that PC AT BIOS I talked about? Yeah, it's gone. We now have a UEFI firmware. We call it UFI, which means we can now boot off virtual SCSI. In fact, virtual IDE is gone. There is no virtual IDE there. It all boots off SCSI. It means we can now support GPT partition disks of greater than 2.2 terabytes. It means we can now resize the boot disk, because we also have a new feature, spoiler alert, that allows you to online resize virtual SCSI disks in 2012 R2. Because we moved the CD DVD ROM from the IDE to the SCSI controller, you also get the little benefit of you can now hot add and remove the DVD on the fly. Pretty cool. In addition, because we went to UFI, there's a security aspect. We now support secure boot in the virtual machine. Now, we think this is actually really cool, because over the years, we know that the bad guys are trying to get lower and lower and lower and lower. They're trying to get into the boot process. And you know what? We want to make that harder and harder and harder. And we've been doing that. We did that in Windows 8 in 2012 by introducing secure boot on physical, and now we're introducing secure boot into VMs with the new Generation 2 VMs. Now, how do you do it? I get this question asked all the time. Real simple. You create a new VM and you're asked, what do you want, a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 VM? By default, Gen 1 is still the default. And let me be very clear. Every VM you have today that's created with Hyper-V is a Gen 1 VM, and it all just works. I'm going to say this many times. Every VM you have right now just works. You don't need to convert. You don't need to reconfigure. It just works. Now, when you go and create a new VM, it'll ask you Gen 1 or Gen 2. Once you create it, that's it. It's a one-time operation. You cannot convert. If you have a Gen 1 VM, you cannot convert to a Gen 2. It's a one-time operation only. And it's because the hardware looks different. It's because when you lay down an operating system, it actually looks different because it's a UEFI firmware. Notice the VM settings look dramatically different. The VM settings on the left, Gen 1, there's an ID controller, there's COM ports, there's all sorts of legacy things like the legacy network. Gen 2 VM doesn't need any of those things. Doesn't have an IDE controller. Those are all gone. So we've been able to simplify it. And in fact, let's take a look inside the VM. On the left-hand side, what do you see? Look at that Generation 1. It's got a PCI bus. It has an ISA bridge. When's the last time you saw a system or a server with an ISA bridge, huh? Warms the cockles of my heart to say that's gone. Don't need it. Thank you very much. COM ports, floppy controller. Yes, we have a floppy controller in our virtual machine. Don't need that anymore in a Gen 2 VM. Processor to PCI bridge, ID control, it's just all gone. And in fact, the PCI bus is completely gone. Everything is now attached to VM bus, our native virtual machine bus. So very excited about this. Now, you may be thinking, wow, this is really cool. This is really awesome. So what was removed? Those are my legacy devices that are all gone, what they've been replaced with, and some of the enhancements. Boot from VHD, hot add remove secure, hot add remove the virtual SCSI ROM, secure boot, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I want to be very clear about, super clear about, it's not for everyone. As I said before, Gen 1 VMs are still the default. They are going to be the default for some time. And the reason why is this. Gen 2 VMs are x64 only. No x86. It's x64 only. It's very limited in guest support. I'm being super transparent about this. It only supports Windows 8 and Windows 2012 and later. Not 7, not XP, not Linux. We are working on support for Linux. But it's x64, it's Windows 8, it's Windows 2012 and later. Okay? We are taking a stand, and that's this is a forward-looking. Because of this, and because of its very limited compatibility, Gen 1 VMs are going to stay the default. They just work, and they work great. The important thing is your investment in Hyper-V is safe. Everything you have just works. And in fact, you can run all of your existing VMs without modification. You can even live migrate on over to 2012 R2. It'll all just work. And Gen 1 and Gen 2 VMs run great together. You just run them on the same server. There's nothing you need to do. It's just another VM. Okay? But again, I'm being super clear about this, that we're going to be very conservative about this. We are not going to go out and tell everybody, start running Gen 2 VMs. That's why Gen 1 VMs are still the default. On top of that, by the way, I also want to point out those features I pointed out, those are the only new features. Those features are the ones that are new to Gen 2 VMs. All of the new features I'm going to show you work for both. Okay? We were very clear. All the cool new stuff just works on Gen 1 and Gen 2. Okay? But things like secure boot, where we went to the UEFI firmware, booting from virtual SCSI, those types of things, those are Gen 2. But all the other new features work equally across others. For example, enhanced VM interaction. So one of the things we want to do is we want to make VMs much more usable. We want to make them much more friendly. We want to give you full remoting desktop capabilities. And what I mean by this, shared clipboard. Now copy and paste in your VMs. Just all works. Today we can do like text, very limited. Now we can do full-on pictures, full-on files. You want to copy PowerShell scripts, you just want to go, it's full-on shared clipboard. Audio redirection. You want to watch movies, you want to watch video, you want to listen to audio in your VM, just works. Enhanced login, smart cards, and more. And it's enabled even when the network is down. So even if your VM network is down, you have full console access and full RDP into that. And yes, all of this just works with live migration. One of the core tenets we had in Server 2012 continues in 2012 R2, which is every new feature has to work with live migration. No exceptions. Other guys can't say that. Not only do we say that, we insist on it, because that's what you told us. So, your feedback on storage. Jeff, I want to be able to dynamically resize storage online. I want to be able to manage storage to an SLA. Guest clustering is difficult to manage. Deduple is great for VM libraries, but we need more. So let's start with this. I already mentioned this, I already kind of let this one out of the bag, but we now have online SCSI virtual disk resize. So we can dynamically grow or shrink It's not just grow, it's both. Dynamically grow or shrink SCSI VHDX on the fly. Really cool, really easy. Literally walk into a VM, right-click, check the settings, change it. You're done. It's super awesome. By the way, it's guest OS agnostic. It works with Windows, it works with Linux, doesn't matter. So it's all just there. By the way, speaking of Linux, dynamic memory is in for Linux. You want to do file consistent aware snapshots and backups. That's in Linux now. So we got you covered there as well. So one of the interesting challenges that we've heard, especially from cloud service providers, is this thing known as the noisy neighbor. Now, enterprises certainly will have this, and this is certainly an issue for them. But for cloud service providers, this is really super important because this is how they make money. So let me give you the exact scenario for this. You can see here I got 10 VMs. And the cloud service provider has storage that provides 1,000 IOPS. So that little disk there, that little pile of storage there, it gives me 1,000 IOPS. I have 10 customers with 10 VMs. Everything is running fine. Everything is good. Customer 1 decides to fire up a SQL server consuming 950 IOPS. Customer 1 is super thrilled. Cloud is awesome. Cloud is great. I didn't have to buy any incredible storage. I'm getting great performance. Everything is awesome. Cloud rules. Customers 2 through 10 are really, really angry right now. Because guess what? We're all sharing 50 IOPS. Our performance just fell off a cliff. We're calling support right now, demanding to know what is going on. I have guys calling sales, demanding an immediate refund. So what happens in this scenario? By the way, this is based on real facts, real stories, real things that we're hearing out there. Well, what ends up happening is this. The cloud service provider is freaking out. He just knows he's got 9 people really angry asking for money back. That's all eating into his margin. The fact that he's even on having the phone call means he's paying for that support call. So what does he do? He needs to resolve this situation immediately. What does he do? He goes and turns off VM number 1. Yeah. How good is that, huh? See, he doesn't know, is that VM doing something that's important? Is it been infected by something? Does he have a rogue process? Did the guy just write some bad code and now it's killing the rest of the servers? I don't know. All I know is I got 9 people that are really upset. So he goes and turns it off. He just kills it. Now the other 9 are going, oh, everything's good. Unfortunately, I'm really upset because that was my VM, and now it's dead, and I need to go figure out why. So we want to provide a solution to that. And a way to do that is with storage quas. With storage quas, we can now set a hard cap. And guess what? I'm going to set that to 25 or 100. And in fact, all 10 of those guys had bronze level service. And bronze level service means you get 100 IOPS. So I set that to 100 IOPS. So even if I go run that SQL server and it needs more, sorry, it's going to get capped at 100. It can't go any faster than that, even if there's more available, because that's all I'm paying for. Now, as the cloud service provider, I can say, look, you know what? I could upgrade you to the silver level service, and then I can give you 250 IOPS. You'll pay a little bit more, but it'll be done faster. Would you like to do that? The important thing is now I have a way to control this. I don't have one VM just automatically going and wreaking and havoc, engaging in the noisy neighbor problem. It's dynamically configurable. You can make this change while the VM is running. It's all hot. And it works with both virtual ID, virtual SCSI, Gen 1, and Gen 2. So it's just all there. It is just all goodness. So online resize, storage quas, all built into 2012 R2. Another interesting challenge for cloud service providers is guest clustering. Enterprises have this issue as well, but I'll explain why it's a little bit different for them. So in a cloud service provider, I'm the guy at the bottom. I'm the cloud service provider, and you're all my customers. So as the infrastructure admin, I'm focused on the bottom like a laser. Okay? I want to make sure that that bottom, the compute, the storage, and networking, I'm always working on uptime and agility and performance and lowering cost. Anything I can do to lower cost means I make more money, gives me more margins, and I want to always be able to focus on that. The VMs and services that are provisioned above to my customers, to my tenants, they get those, but they don't get to actually see the hardware. It's opaque. They get a VM. they get some storage. They don't know where that storage is. They don't know if it's on a SAN or a direct attach or on a scale-out file server. They just know they get a VM with some memory and some storage. And we like that. We like that clear separation. Customers are happy, I'm happy. It means I can live migrate them, I can change out the hardware, maybe I'm going to put in some new storage, maybe I'm going to upgrade the servers, and all of this happens below the line without the guys above the line ever even knowing it. So customers demand high availability. I want to be able to take an application that I've been running on my premises using guest clustering, and I want to be able to move it to the cloud. Awesome, right? Unfortunately, guest clustering requires opening a hole to present a LUN. Because I've got to basically say, here's a nice SCSI LUN or a fiber channel LUN, and present that LUN from the physical infrastructure. Now me, as the cloud service provider admin, you know what I say? Not a chance. That's not happening. No way. There's a reason why that big red line exists. Because we maintain separation. Last thing I'm ever going to do is actually let you see what my physical hardware looks like. So everybody's unhappy here. Customers unhappy because they can't do what they want. Cloud service providers unhappy because I can't give you that service and I can't charge you more and I can't provide you the solution you're looking for. So we want to solve this problem. We're going to solve the challenge of guest clustering by introducing shared VHDX virtual disks. This is about solving the hard problems. This is something only Microsoft does. Look at this. We now provide virtual disks that can be shared without presenting the real LUNs to the tenants. So look at the diagram and watch this. We now, to enable guest clustering, we now create a virtual disk that lives above the red line. So guess what? My VMs, they see shared storage. They get HA. My cloud service provider, I'm really happy because guess what? We've maintained that separation. You stay on that side of the line, I'll stay on the side of the line, everything will be good. My customer's happy because he gets the guest clustering they're looking for. Yeah, I'm going to charge him a little more. Sure, this may cost you, I don't know, 40% more, 50% more, but guess what? You're used to paying for it because you're already paying for HA. So you know what? You're willing to do it. In fact, you're happy to do it because you demand HA. You're not even going to move to the cloud if you don't get this feature. So actually, everyone's really happy. We're very excited about shared VHDX because this solves a very hard problem. So guest clustering with shared virtual disks. I talked about this in the keynote. If you saw me do the keynote the other day, I showed you deduplication with running VMs. And this is something we very much focused on for VDI because VDI has the most possibility for commonality of images. And that's what we focused on this release. And it, of course, supports CSVs, the cluster shared volumes, and as I showed in the keynote demo on Monday, you also get better performance because we can intelligently cache those common blocks used by deduplication. It is really amazing. I'll be honest with you, I was the first skeptic. I remember when the program manager called me up that actually owns deduplication. He's like, Jeff, I got to show you something, but you need to come over to my office. And he said, Jeff, deduplication actually increases the performance of VMs. And I said, hogwash. I said, I want to see it. He said, that's why I brought you over to my office. And he demoed it for me. I said, I want to see that again. He said, here it is. I said, I need you to show that to me again. Okay, great. Show it to me one more time. Couldn't believe it. Because of the fact that we're taking advantage of the opportunity that with deduplication, we know where those common blocks live. We can put those in the cache, and you get better performance. It's amazing. It's awesome. It's built into 2012 R2. We want to solve tough problems. Another tough problem we want to solve is this one. You get an error in production. You have some VM, you have some application, and something goes dead. Like all of a sudden, you can no longer access the VM over the network. You don't know what it is. Is it an application error problem? Did the application process die? What do? You're left with two options. You can take the service down and investigate. So you take the VM, you give it to your test and dev, and you have them take a look at it. Go look at the log files, go see what's happening. Unfortunately, all the customers that are trying to access the service are really upset right now because you have downtime. So that's not good. Option number two is you restart it and just hope that it was transient. Hey, maybe it's not going to come back. Let's just do one of these and just cross our fingers and everything will be good, right? Neither one of these options is good. What you really want is option three, is live export of a VM, live cloning. With this, you can take a live clone of the virtual machine and now hand it off to test dev, and they can debug it offline. They can go take a look at the log files. They can determine, you know what, this was a transient error. It's not going to come back. Or, you know what, this is a real problem. We introduced a patch the other night. It actually broke something. We just found it. Now we can test this patch on this clone and now redeploy this back into production. That solves a very real problem in a very real way. Love this feature. So live export, also another key feature in Server 2012 R2. When it came to mobility and replica, Jeff, Server 2012 NIC teaming is awesome. Keep working on that. Make it easier to upgrade my cloud infrastructure. Hyper-V live migration is awesome. Keep pushing on it. Replica is awesome. Can we configure this further? So first thing we want to do is we want to protect VMs from network outages. So today, if you go up to a server that's in a cluster and yank out the power cable, what happens? The VMs will automatically fail over to other nodes in the cluster. All is good. If you have a cluster and you go up and pull out the network cable, what happens? Nothing. Because what's happening is, yeah, it's actually still running, everything's happening, but network connectivity is gone. Or what if a NIC dies? Well, that's why you have NIC teaming. So that gives you a resiliency there. But if a cable goes out, we want to make sure we can solve against that one. Yeah, we're pushing the edges of resiliency. We want to take HA to the network. So we can now detect that network failure, like a cable unplug, like a network adapter failure, and all of this works with NIC teaming. And we can then live migrate the VM to another node in the cluster that isn't having this problem. So what happens is we actually are testing to see, do we have link is alive on this host for all my networks and switches? Oh, guess what? This one switch no longer has network access, but it's available on all the other hosts. Let's live migrate these VMs automatically, without user intervention, to another node in the cluster. This is sweetness. And this is on by default. This is called protected network. Again, all built into 2012 R2. I'm sorry, I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. I got limited time here. I'm already getting the yellow light. Virtual RSS. Virtual RSS is about dramatically improving performance of NICs. We give you great performance already today in Hyper-V with VMQ and with SRIOV. With SRIOV, I can easily deliver line rate into a virtual machine. In fact, I can team two SRIOV NICs into a VM right now, get you 20 gigabits into a VM and live migration. No other virtualization platform offers it. We've been doing it for over a year now. Other guys are still trying to catch up with that one. Well, at the same time, we're also going to make our synthetic NIC faster with virtual RSS. This allows us to basically, with virtual RSS, it allows us to take network activity within the VM. Today, it gets pinned to virtual processor 0. With virtual RSS, we can now spread that across multiple virtual processors within a VM, and we can drive you all the way up to 9 gigabits. It's awesome. The only requirement is that your NIC has to support VMQ. So make sure that when you're buying servers, we like VMQ a lot. Make sure that your NICs support VMQ. So this is an awesome new feature built right into the VMs. Live migration. So we've let the cat out of the bag, big one on this one. I demoed this in the keynote. Compression is awesome. On average, we're seeing over 2x faster live migrations. In some cases, it's even a lot faster than that, depending on just how busy the VM is. If the VM is largely idle, you got a bunch of VMs that are web servers or not doing much, it can be a heck of a lot faster. With SMB Direct, we are now pushing the actual limits of PCIe. We are now pushing the limits of RAM. That's how fast this is. SMB Direct is phenomenal, and we are going to continue to tune it. You saw this week in the keynote, I did the first live migration between two VMs running on Server 2012. It was about 1:30. I did the second one with compression. It was about 30-35. I did the third one, I believe it was 23 seconds. Spoiler alert, that was actually the slowest it's run all week. You thought it was cool. I was actually disappointed. It's going to get faster. We're still very early on. We still got some performance tuning to do. It's going to get even faster. So live migration with compression and with SMB Direct all built in. And by default, we will use compression. Couple things to point out. The guidance is really simple. When should I use one or the other? Well, if you've got 10 gigabit or less, use compression. Again, that's the default. If you've got over 10 gigabit, you got two 10 gig NICs teamed, go with SMB Direct. If you got RDMA, always use SMB. Because one of the other great benefits of SMB Direct is you get multi-channel. So we'll create multiple channels for live migration. That's one of the reasons why performance is just like jaw-droppingly good. And again, we're still performance tuning. It's still very early in that. One of the other nice things, and I didn't get a chance to demo this in the keynote, we just ran out of time, is we want to provide you a zero downtime infrastructure upgrade. This is important. You've just finished deploying your server 2012 Hyper-V and you're going, hold it. Now there's 2012 R2, that was quick. Well, guess what? We're going to make it real easy because you can now live migrate those VMs from 2012 to 2012 R2 with cross-version live migration. It is a one-way upgrade. I do want to point that out. We're not going back and forth. Our goal here is to make it real easy going forward to always upgrade to the next version. Okay, so it's literally, and if you're using VMM, it's a drag and drop. I was going to show that in the keynote. It's literally drag, drop. I just went to 2012 R2. And guess what? The 2012 R2 is using tiering and deduplication, and now all those VMs are running 10 times faster just by live migrating it to a new server. Pretty awesome. This also works with Share Nothing live migration. So it's not just live migration, it's full-on Share Nothing live migration. It is sweet. In terms of replica, your top request was this one. Jeff, I want to be able to change the configuration of the replication time. By default in 2012, well actually, the only option in 2012 was we replicate every 5 minutes. And we chose that because we looked for the sweet spot. I have colleagues that have been replicating VMs between their homes over a cable modem. Okay? It works great. That was our goal. We wanted to go after commercial broadband. We want to make replication available to everyone. I'm happy to say it looks like we're succeeding in a very big way, and we got people just super excited out of their mind about replica. But now we've had people say, you know what? I want to do this between, different buildings in my company. And we got these really big fat pipes. Can we go faster than that? Okay, so now we have 30 seconds. Turns out at Microsoft, our own teams love this. They actually replicate VMs between labs now all the time. And so they're loving the new 30-second option because like VMs, they're like lightning. On the other hand, we have folks that have really dodgy network connections. Like, guess what? I'm using satellite connectivity in the middle of Africa or Australia. Guess what? We need something with a little bit more tolerance, give me a little bit more leeway for replication, so we'll go to 15 minutes. So we give you additional configuration there. Integrated VM replication, customers love it. However, we actually realized we created we forgot one thing. So we told cloud service providers, we want you to set yourself up as a replication target. It's a great opportunity for you. For small companies that are literally one site and don't have a second site to replicate to, you should be able to replicate to a cloud service provider. Cloud service provider said, yeah, this is really cool. I want to be that, except one problem. They want to use Replica 2. So in Windows Server 2012, you can go from one site to one site. But turns out the service provider wants to be able to replicate it as well. So in 2012 R2, we're introducing tertiary replication. So now a customer can go to site 1, and the hoster can go from his site 1 to his site 2. So everybody's happy here. So now we made that a lot easier for cloud service providers. So Microsoft Hyper-V Server 2012. Some of you may know what this product is. Some of you may not know what this product is. Microsoft Hyper-V Server is our free hypervisor. We've had this for many, many years. My team has delivered it for many, many years. You won't find it marketed very much. Honestly, our marketing guys don't like to market it. It's actually not they don't like to. It's just they don't have the time to. It's a free product. It is a completely free enterprise-class hypervisor. It is just the hypervisor. There's the beauty of the Hyper-V server interface. Ah, it's a command line. Isn't that nice? Makes you want to run screaming out of the room, huh? It's command line. It's only Hyper-V. It's not the file server. It's not a domain controller. It's not a print server. It's literally just Hyper-V. And it's completely free. And it is an enterprise-class hypervisor. Let me be very clear. And it is a free download. We've actually delivered Hyper-V Server 2008, 2008 R2, 2008 R2 SP1, and 2012, 4 versions. And even though we don't market it, you clearly know about it because we're getting about 25,000 downloads a month of this product. I think the only one marketing it is me, honestly. Our marketing guys, I love them. They're just too busy, so they don't have time to market a free product. So why would you use Hyper-V Server? There's a bunch of good reasons why. In fact, this is why we created it. Number one, Linux. Runs Linux great. Customers tell me, look, I'm running a free version, I'm running a free OS with Linux. Well, can I get a free hypervisor? Absolutely, Hyper-V Server. Runs Red Hat, runs CentOS, runs Debian, runs Ubuntu, runs insert Linux OS here. In fact, we have an open source team that's been developing Linux components into the Linux kernel now for many, many years. In fact, last year, I believe we were the 17th top contributor into the Linux kernel. Did a Microsoft guy say that? Runs great. And in fact, I'm going to go back to Azure for just 1 second. What is Azure running? It's running Hyper-V. Guess what? We have Linux images up on Azure. Yeah, it's okay. It's all right. It's great for VDI. So Windows Server Data Center gives you unlimited copies of Windows Server instances. It does nothing for client. So what you really want is, I want maybe a low-cost hypervisor or a free hypervisor for VDI. Perfect platform for it. And it's great for cloud hosters. Guys that want a cheap, but super rich, powerful hypervisor, there it is. So a couple questions I always get about this. Number one, is this an eval version? Is there activation? This can't be real. Come on. There's no way. Nope, it's real. Full-on enterprise hypervisor. Is this supported in production? Yes, since day one. Does Hyper-V Server have reduced, limited, or scale? That's got to be the kicker, because the other guys do that. No. Full-on real version. I'll show you in just a second. Is System Center required for live migration or live storage migration? No. You can do it via PowerShell. You can do it via the free RSAT tools that we provide. Certainly, if you're running at scale, you're going to want System Center. I highly recommend it, but certainly not required. All right. Is clustering included? That's got to be the trick, right? There's no failover clustering in this. Oh, no, it's been in there for many releases. Okay. Does it include live migration? Yes, 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 and more yes. What about shared nothing live migration? You certainly wouldn't give that away, right? Oh, no, it's in there. It's all there. Well, what about the extensible switch? The other guys charge you $5,000 a proc for this. There's no way Microsoft would give that away, right? Actually, we would. It's all in there. Okay, well, what about replica? That awesome replication, there's no way you're giving that away. Actually, it's in there. In fact, spoiler alert, the best way to replicate Linux is right there. It's free, it's replication, it's all there. We actually replicate it better than Linux does. So, you can see when you compare it to the other guys, it's really not a comparison. The other guys, it's all about limits. VMware has a free version. That's the VMware free version. I'm doing a like-for-like comparison. This is an apples-to-apples comparison. The other guys will try and make wacky comparisons and compare their $5,000 stack to my free thing. No, compare the like things. This is ESXi free versus Hyper-V Server free. Guess what? We smoked them. It's not even close. And just to be clear, their free version is limited in scale. They only support vCPUs and a VM. Host RAM is limited to 32 gigs. No vMotion, no storage vMotion, no HA, no extensible switch, no VM replication. It's just no. Hyper-V Server 2012, crazy performance, crazy shared nothing, live migration, live storage migration, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And craziness. Oh my gosh, how's Microsoft going to top this? I mean, what could we possibly do to top this even further? How about this? Surprise! Microsoft Hyper-V Server 2012 R2. You're kidding me, right? What could he possibly be putting in the free hypervisor in 2012 R2? I don't know. How about Generation 2 VMs? How about networking with VM network protection with virtual RSS? How about online disk resize? How about storage quads? How about shared VHDX, which the other guys don't have at all, even in their $5,000 per proc hypervisor? How about storage tiering in our free hypervisor? How about live export, live migration with compression, with SMB direct, replica, configurable, tertiary, also manageable via SCVMM, and by the way, plugs right into our Azure Hyper-V Recovery Manager. You're welcome. So, I know I'm already over time, and I'm 2 minutes over time. If you need to go, please feel free. I'm going to keep going because, honestly, I got a couple more things that are cool that I want to tell you about. That was my big surprise, though. So, question I get asked all the time, Jeff, I'm getting ready to purchase some new storage or new networking for cloud infrastructure. What are the things that I should look for? So, if you're looking at file-based storage, like a NAS, here are the things to look for. Number one, SMB3. I'm going to make no bones about it. I'm going to be completely transparent and crystal clear. If you're buying storage and you're going to use SMB and it's 1.0 or SMB2, the answer is no thank you. The answer is show me the next thing, please. Do not waste $1 on anything that is not SMB3. If you're a storage partner in this room and you just heard what I said, please make your product SMB3 now. SMB1 is a 20-plus year protocol. In Spanish, we would say basura. SMB2 got better. It's old. It's way past time. It's SMB3. Insist on SMB3. Otherwise, you're pretty much driving one of these. SMB Direct. We're taking advantage of it in the file server. We're taking advantage of it in live migration. RDMA is awesome. We are investing heavily in this technology. We invested it in 2012. We invested it in 2012 R2. We like this technology a lot. Spaces certified JBots. So our file server, like I said before, the back end is Spaces. We like the ability to just keep on plugging in more storage. And the way to do that is with Spaces certified JBots. So look for those. Those are you can find those on our Windows Server catalog. In fact, if you go down into the partner pavilion, you'll see that Dell just announced a cluster in a box. It's about yay big. It's a 2-node file server cluster. It's awesome. It's literally 2 nodes. It's all configured internally for a cluster. You could literally roll this into a branch office, turn the thing on, and you have a full-on storage cluster right there. It's completely redundant. One node goes down, the other one continues right along. If you need to plug in more storage later, you buy another tray of disk, you plug it in. It's truly an awesome thing to behold. SAN array features to look for. If you've already invested heavily in SAN and want to keep doing that, make sure it's got ODX. Once you see ODX, you can't go back. The good news is most of the SAN vendors have already provided this as a free firmware upgrade. If you haven't gotten it yet or you have storage that doesn't support ODX, don't buy anything else that doesn't have ODX. Don't waste $1 on it. NPIV, if you're doing fiber channel, and you're going to want to make sure that your VMs can do it, so make sure all of your HBAs support NPIV. This has been around for quite a while, so not a big deal, but I do want to make sure it's up there. Trim and unmap, really important for storage as well, because we can automatically reclaim storage when a VM deletes it and notify your file system and notify your SAN, so that your SAN can reclaim that really expensive storage automatically. Trim and unmap is something you want to look for. SMIS support. One of the big things I hear from customers, they have a storage problem. In fact, every customer has a storage problem. And it's usually one of 3 things. Jeff, my storage costs too much. Number 2, I have storage all over the place. It's all siloed, and I can't manage it holistically. Or number 3, I don't have enough of it, or actually all of the above. We're trying to rein this in. We're trying to make it easier to manage. Make sure that your storage supports SMIS. Because if you're using Virtual Machine Manager, guess what? We can provision your storage, we can manage your storage, all from VMM, because we are doing everything via SMIS now. It's all standards-based. For networking features, look for VMQ. I wouldn't buy a server today or a NIC today that didn't support VMQ. NVGRE provides us flexibility between clouds. You're going to see a whole bunch more silicon vendors, and I have another slide on this in a second, that shows that they're adopting NVGRE. We're getting a huge amount of adoption for NVGRE and the things we're doing in networking. SRIOV, critical for those massive scale-up workloads where you need to get more than 10 gigabits into a VM. That's how you do it. If you've got that massive scale-up SQL server, you've got that massive Dynamics or CRM, and you need more than 10 gigabits, the only way you can do it on any virtualization platform is SRIOV. The difference is we're the only ones that can enable SRIOV and give you live migration at the same time, and it all just works. And then keep in mind, look for plugins for System Center, like we saw from Symantec today. It's really awesome that, look, there's just plugged right in. I need to access my Symantec console. It's there. You're going to see others that are doing that as well. Our networking partner ecosystem, we have gateway appliances from F5, Iron, Huawei. Arista has an OMI-based switch for top-of-rack switch, which means VMM can actually now help and manage your switches, your physical switches from VMM. Cisco, NEC, 5.9 Inmon. In fact, Cisco's announced that you can see the Nexus 1000V is here, and in fact, they have a version that's free. Plugs right into Hyper-V. Awesome. Broadcom, Intel, Mellanox, Emulex, Brocade, guess what? They're all putting NVGRE into their chipsets. The nice thing that, in terms of our network virtualization, it's all standards-based. We did that on purpose. It's nothing about it is Microsoft proprietary. NVGRE is an industry standard. All these folks realize that, recognize it, and see all of the work that we're doing in networking and love it. So you're going to see NVGRE just into the chipsets. So finally, this is the best platform for Microsoft apps. If you're creating a virtualization or cloud platform, whether it's running Dynamics, Exchange, Leak, SharePoint, SQL Server, it's managed with it's running Microsoft Windows Server with Hyper-V managed by Microsoft System Center. This is the best tested, best performing, most scalable solution supported end-to-end by Microsoft. If you call us up and you're having a problem running SQL Server on Hyper-V, guess what? We can determine the exact best way to troubleshoot and address the issue. Is it something we need to fix in SQL? Is it something we need to do in the networking stack or the storage stack or in Hyper-V or somewhere else, or even a driver inside any one of those components? Other guys can't do that. They have no visibility into SQL. They have no visibility into our apps. They only offer a very limited view of the world. Whole bunch of related content. And by the way, I will be at the Hyper-V booth. So I just want to say thank you guys very, very much. I hope you enjoyed TechEd, and I will see you down in the pavilion. Thank you very much.